Good morning, or good afternoon, that is. I want to thank everyone for coming today and thank everyone who participated this whole week. We've had a terrific week of webinars and with some terrific presentations. Yesterday was the pollinator pathway. And as an adjunct to that topic, I want to introduce you to Michael DiGiorgio, who is a nationally known bird artist. Mike will tell you his whole story, but I came to know Mike several years ago, and I'm just so wowed by the work that he's done and how he takes what he sees in nature, which are birds, and puts them on a palette and a canvas, and he does such beautiful work. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and we'll save our questions for the end. Again, we'll be recording this and making it available on our YouTube channel for afterward. If I don't get to talk to you again this week, thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Mike, over to you.
Hello, I'm Mike DiGiorgio, and I'm going to give a presentation based on the thing I know best, which is myself. I'm going to give a brief history of my history of nature painting from the very beginning up to where I am right now. And it's basically a history that a lot of other bird artists have in common. We all started off with our love of the subject matter, which is birds, and we all learned how to draw and paint along the way. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is recapture, not by just painting a bird, but we're trying to recapture an experience. And the further I got into doing this, the more I was successful, I feel, at capturing an experience I had as a child or even as a young adult. So what I'm going to do is give a PowerPoint presentation with history of my, painting birds. And then when I'm finished, I'll be happy to answer whatever questions you have, okay? So I took a breath mint and I'm all ready to go. So I need to put on my glasses and I'm going to share my screen, okay? So let me know if there's any problems with any of this, but I think we got it down. All right, so I'm gonna open this, share, and say play. Okay. So this is one of my paintings and I worked very hard on this. I want you to see this flashy, look at that, and journey of a nature painter. I just learned how to do this, so I hope you're impressed. All right, so when I was a very young kid, this is an old painting, I hope you know that. I was drawing birds from the age of 5 up. And here's a painting or drawing I did when I was actually 10 years old. I looked outside and it was a crow on a roof. So I decided to try to draw it with pastel. And this is something I've done recently. So you'll see the whole journey from the last piece to this. And these are some plates that I've done for birds of Brazil. So I did make, and I'm currently making a living as a bird illustrator. These are birds that live in Brazil. They're herons and egrets. So when I was very young, I wanted to be a cowboy. And this is me with my cowboy hat on. But then I decided along the way to become a bird artist. So I got my first Field Guide to the Birds by Peterson, and it changed my life. I started as a very young boy looking at pictures and trying to identify the birds. Little did I know that in the future, I would actually be contributing to the Peterson Guide, where I actually illustrated birds that are in the current issue. So you never know what's going to happen in your life, but if you keep at it and you stay focused, good things happen. So I really worked hard to get to this point. Oops, let me go back. This is a drawing I did when I was in the 3rd grade. There was an art contest and I did a cardinal. I'm especially impressed that I actually drew the frame. That would save a lot of money. And I actually got 3rd prize for this in the contest. First prize, it was Catholic school, so Judy Falauco got first prize for doing the Blessed Mother. It was a shoe-in, but third prize for a cardinal was pretty good for me. My next big break was I won a contest doing a cartoon of Dennis the Menace, and I won $25 bond, and my parents made me put it away. Actually, I wonder where that bond is. It's probably worth quite a bit now. But anyway, so it's somewhere. But I won a big contest and I was in the paper, and there I am getting my bond for this cartoon. Oops, I keep going fast. So then I started painting birds, as I got older. And what I did was I would find dead birds by windows that flew into a window of a company or whatever. So I would pose the bird and I would paint it, and I would get some vegetation. And as you can see, these birds are accurate, but they look like dead birds on a board with vegetation. They're stiff, but what this was doing was teaching me what the structure of a bird actually looks like. This was one of the first paintings I did where the bird actually, I felt, looked alive. I was watching a golden crown kinglet, and I watched it perch on a hemlock pine cone. So you could see that I actually did a sketch of it and did this painting. I did this painting, I think, when I was 15 or 16. And I felt like it was a breakthrough for me. Then I became a hippie, and I started painting realistic things. Oops, and the bird paintings really changed once I was a hippie. Actually, this was an illustration from a children's book that I did. My first job as a professional artist was for a company called Rustcraft greeting cards. And these are the type of cards I was painting. I would go in, draw cards, I would get the subject matter and the occasion, and I would create cards. So day after day, I was working on painting these greeting cards in watercolor. And what this was doing was training me how to use the material. Oops. And I would do things like this. But after a while, a lot of us got really bored, and we started painting hidden things in the cards to entertain ourselves. So if you look closely, there's a AC plug coming out of the pumpkin. And this card was actually printed. So we would, get away with stuff like that. Then many years later, I moved to Connecticut because I got a job with a Weekly Reader in Middletown. And they had me learn the computer to do graphic like this, charts and graphs, consumption of cigarettes. I would also paint things like this for children, dinosaurs. So once again, I was working with learning how to use computers. The early computers back in the 80s were very, very primal in a way. They were just like little TVs. But I was still working with paint. So I would paint whatever the story was. I would paint the illustration for it. And I got a commission to do plates for the Danbury Mint. And so I painted a number of plates for them. So I was working as an artist for Weekly Reader, but I was freelancing and trying to make money as a wildlife artist. So this was one of the plates I painted for them. Oops. And actually, this was never printed, unfortunately, but they paid me for it. So you never know when you're doing a freelance job if it's going to make it or not. Then my biggest break when I was a young adult came when I met this gentleman. His name was Don Eckleberry. Now, a lot of you probably don't recognize the name, but he did the first Audubon field guide, and he was considered the greatest American bird painter alive. And I was going to meet him. Now, obviously, this was an earlier picture. I didn't know him when he looked like this, but he would entertain and see young artists. They would come to his house. Here's his first Audubon land guide by Don Eckleberry. And here's his illustrations. And from a very young age, I could see that nobody could draw birds as accurately as he could. A lot of people draw birds, but when I looked at his work, I could actually see the bird that I saw in life in his drawings. They had that soul to them. So I really wanted to meet him. It was like, for me, like meeting the Beatles or something, you know? So, and this was his most famous and last book, Birds of the West Indies by James Bond. A little bit of trivia. James Bond, the movie character, was taken from this particular gentleman, James Bond. They saw this name on this particular guide and used the name James Bond for the character in the movie. And this was Don Eckleberry's last illustrations in that book. And these are some of the most magnificent bird paintings ever done. And you can see they have a little bit of light and shadow in them. So these were the final illustrations he did. So I would go to see Don Eckleberry, and I was let into this realm of bird art. This was his living room. He lives in Long Island, and I would see paintings like this from Trinidad, and I couldn't wait to meet him. But what I was met with him, a very honest and outrageous person. Here's another painting of his. So this is what he looked like when I went to see him. And he would not hold back when he was giving you critiques. So this is Don Eckleberry.
But I'll tell you, I'm not a very generous person, and I mean, I've had people come to me and ask me about the work, and I can't tell them it's good if it's not really good, unless it's really good. I think you're doing a disservice to somebody to sort of play them along till they think they have a chance at something which at best is very difficult, and to succeed in it is, edging toward impossible. So, I mean, there have been people here. I mean, I remember one guy flew all the way from Oregon for criticism, which I gave him freely. Did sketches, showed him how to, what was wrong with the way he painted eyes and feet and things like that. And I could see he was not happy with that I didn't boo and all over that he was far from ready to get into this full time. And so finally I got exasperated, and I said, well, if you wanted to know how nice it was, how good it was, you could have stayed at home and asked your mother. So I don't, I'm very selective about, good is good, and it's not too often come across really, whatever it is. 80% of everything is junk. Like Mencken said, nobody ever went broke underestimating the taste of the American public.
Real curmudgeon, but he was brutally honest with me. And in the end, he passed away in 2000. We became good friends, and he encouraged me to keep going. So obviously he saw something in my work and really helped me. I feel like the visits with Don Eckleberry were more important in all my years of art school, because he really was incredibly talented, but he was generous with his time as well. So what he told me was start to paint things from life. You have to get out there and look at things and sketch them from life and jot down what you're seeing. So I started with painting plants from life. I would do something like this of the cardinal flower. Then I said, well, I'm going to work my way into wildlife. So I started with things that move slow, right? So I started with a turtle, and this is a sketch from life. So I said, okay, I can draw plants that sit still. I can draw turtles that move slow. Now it's time to tackle doing birds. So I started doing sketches of birds that, once again, were killed by hitting windows, and I would do studies of them. And this is a sketch. And what this was doing was really teaching me how to paint the plumage, be accurate with the number of feathers in the wing, the primaries and secondaries, teaching me a lot about the bird. And here's a sketch I did of of a cormorant. And when you're doing a sketch from a dead bird, the best thing to do is to go for the fleshy parts first, because within an hour they fade away. The feathers stay the same. So I was doing sketches of inside the mouth, the beak, and getting the color of that down. Then I started tackling going out and sketching birds from life. And at first I was trying to capture all the feathers, but then I soon learned through Don Eccleberry that no, you don't do that. You can get birds from skins, and which I'll explain later. You want to just capture the character of how they move in the wild, very simple little drawings. So I started doing sketches like this. And Don Eccleberry said, you should go to Trinidad. There's a wildlife painting course there, and you should go and do tropical birds. So I saved up my pennies and I went to Trinidad for the first time. It was my trip to South America. And this is where I stayed at the Asa Wright Center, which is very famous now. It looks quite different now, but this was back in 1982, I think. So it's in the middle of an incredible valley with lots of birds, and it caters to bird watchers. And this is the view from the veranda of the valley. And you have toucans and bellbirds flying around. So I was in heaven, and I started sketching. This is a view of the porch. You'd sit there looking at birds. They bring you rum punch. It was unbelievable. And this was a gentleman who was teaching the course. His name is Wayne Trim. He worked for the conservationists in New York. So there I am looking, and he's demonstrating some techniques in drawing. And so we were encouraged to grab whatever we could and start drawing it. So there I was drawing a bug, some type of beetle, I believe. And these are some of the sketches from that particular trip. We were drawing frogs or whatever we could find, and I was using my watercolor paint. So photography is important as well. So we would take photographs of things like these blue-gray tanagers, and later on I would use them and my sketches of them to develop a painting. So this is my sketch of the bird. They actually trap these and put them in cages so we could sketch them. And some of these sketches were also from life. So I would do color studies of the bird. And later on, I did this painting based on those early days of my sketching. So this was done about 4 years ago, blue-gray tanager. Another bird we would see is the cocoa thrush, and these are my sketches of that bird. So you could see that little by little, I was gaining quite a bit of skill in drawing from life and using my watercolor paints. That foot sketch was the most important thing when I went to repaint this bird. And this is a Docnus, and these are my sketches of that bird. So you can see what I'm doing is trying to capture the colors and the movement of the bird. And this is a bearded mannequin, which is famous. It has a particular dance that it does, and it's very loud. So these are my little sketches I did. I sat there for a morning and I was doing sketches, and you could see I did the display of the bird where it kind of expands the beard out. And this is me after, this is actually out of order, but this is me at an art show later on with some of my sketches. So here's what I do when I go out and sketch from life. I have a little kit, and these are my paintbrushes. I have a little box of paint, and I have my little sketchbook. And everything is very, very compact, and I go out and I sketch from life. So here's a picture of me sketching from life. And actually, this was quite cold this day. I was in Deep River sketching some cormorants, or no, actually, these were mergansers. That's right. And I was painting, and it started snowing, and actually snowed on the painting. So here's the painting I did. And if you look closely, you can see little white dots created by the snow falling on the wet paint. And actually, it added a really nice look to this painting. So I since sold this painting, but this was done entirely from life. And you could see the birds were pretty stationary. They were sleeping. So I painted this outdoors. This was painted out my window when I think it was in February. It's one of those wet Connecticut, rainy, snowy days. And these birds were waiting for me to fill the feeders. So I let them stay waiting and I did a sketch of them. And the poor birds had snow building up on them. But this was done entirely from life. So a few years ago, I went to Florida and I started sketching birds from life. And I was sketching some birds that I normally don't get to. We don't have white ibis up here. So I was anxious to actually do some drawing of them. So these are my drawings of the white ibis. And you can see I'm capturing the way they walk, the way they move. And I discovered they have blue eyes, which I didn't know when they're adults. So I thought that was really sweet. These were way off. These are Western grebes, and this was in San Francisco. So these were my sketches of the Western grebes looking through the scope. So one of my greatest joys is to be outdoors and painting from life, doing birds like this. But this is so important in learning how to really capture birds. This was a Florida jay. A friend of ours who was a wildlife ranger brought me to a spot where she was feeding them peanuts. So these were my sketches of the Florida jay. And I was able to do some color studies. So I sat there quite a while. This is a wood stork. I'm sure a lot of you've seen this if you've been in Florida. And this is interesting. I found this interesting to see it was doing this particular movement. And I wasn't sure quite why it would do this. So if you look, it walks and then it exposes and expands its wing. And I think what it's doing is trying to shade the water so it can find the fish. So I did some sketches of this and I actually recorded that as well. So those are some of the moments when you're sketching from life that become really interesting as the behavioral type of things. And later on, I went and used some of these sketches to do this plate of storks for birds of Central America and South America. So you can see that no matter when I did these drawings and how old they are, they're still informing me and helping me with my paintings. So then I started getting some commissions to do full paintings for a magazine called Birdwatcher's Digest from the late Bill Thompson. And this was my first cover. It's titmice. And if you look closely at this, there's an owl in the lower part of it, right under the tail of the upper bird. And the birds are quite upset and they're actually alarming the other creatures in the forest. And in order to do this painting, I put a fake owl out by my feeder and I saw the way they reacted to it and I did sketches. So here's some of the paintings I've done for Birdwatcher's Digest covers. Here's puffins from Machias Seal Island. This one was a scarlet tanager. And to be honest, figuring out the shadow of the bird on a tree took longer than painting the bird itself. That was a real job, but it was a concept I came up with. And this is Blackburnian warblers. And this was a newer one of a great horned owl in a tree. All these were from experiences I've had of seeing these birds. So you could see that the painting is there. They make prints which are available for purchase. And you can see they crop in and use some of the image for the cover. When I do this type of thing, I have to leave room for the text. So they kind of tell me where the text is going to be. A few years ago, I went with a bunch of friends to Panama to do some more birding. And I really enjoyed going there to see some new birds. And this was up on the mountain next to Columbia. So we had guards with us and I was sketching and I had this guy watching me sketch with a machine gun. And I said, can I get a picture of you? And I sent it to my mother and I said, having a good time. She says, I don't like that picture. But anyway, I thought it was kind of cool. And these are some of the sketches I think this was from Costa Rica, but this was done from life of the scarlet macaws flying over a river. And one of the birds I was most anxious to see was a quetzal, resplendent quetzal. So my wife Kate and I were there, and she actually found a nest of them. So I sat for a day and a half just sketching these birds. This was the female digging out the nest. And my wife Kate also found this bird, a long-tailed silky flycatcher, and she found it on a nest. So I got to bring her more often because she finds the best birds on the trip. And this was a bird that's very difficult to see called a sunbitter, and they're famous for opening their wings, and they have these butterfly-like patterns on the wings. I didn't get to see it open its wings too often, but I did sketches of it walking around. And then we were on our trip in Costa Rica, and we found a place that had a birding tower. So I would go up there and just sit all day and sketch the birds. And there was a particular tree that was like a bus station for birds. They would land in this tree, hang out at a particular time of day, and then fly down into the valley. And one of the birds was a toucan. So I decided to do a painting of a toucan based on my sketches. So here's some of the bird of Swainson's back. It was called the yellow-throated toucan. And it was calling. This was the particular tree it would land in. And there's the bird. So I would do sketches of this bird. I was at eye level with it, and I decided to do a painting of it. So this was a painting I did when I was up there of the bird flying from the tree. So I would get skins from museums. They would lend me skins of the bird. I would do studies of the skins and give them back. And then I started to develop the painting. So this is my process for doing a painting of a background. I typically draw everything out very carefully, and I leave the bird white, and I develop the background first. And then I start painting the bird, and I usually use the brighter colors underneath the darker. So you can see I'm putting blue in there, the reddish brown, and then when it's fully done, that's the painting developed. And I adjust all the values. So this is my painting of that particular scene. And once again, like I said earlier, it's not a painting of a toucan for me. It's a painting of seeing the toucan. It's an experience. So I try to get that experience back in the painting. This is a resplendent quetzal that I saw on the trip. One of the most beautiful birds on earth. People come from all over to see this bird. It has a train hanging down from the tail that sometimes goes 3 feet. And there I am sitting there sketching this bird. And this is the bird that Kate found near the nest. So these are some of my sketches of the bird. And then I did a more developed sketch of the bird looking at us. I thought that was an interesting looking profile for the bird. And this is my final painting of the bird based on all my sketches and everything. And I have a print of this available if anyone's interested, but this is a resplendent quetzal. Back in 2005, the bird world was rocked with the possible discovery of the extinct ivory-billed woodpecker. It was on all the news stations. I don't know if anyone was aware of it. So I had to do a painting of an ivory-billed woodpecker, which is extinct. So I went to Yale, and they opened up the drawer, and they had these skins. I couldn't take them out, and I had to use gloves. So I actually did some very careful studies at the museum with my paints of this bird. And I needed something that showed the poses of the bird. So I found this. It's the only video of the bird ever made. And I found this extremely useful to see the way it uses a jerky movement. It's a shame that they really do think this bird is gone. But anyway, it was the largest woodpecker in the world, one of them. So this was done by Cornell back in the 1940s, I believe. So this is my painting of the woodpecker, from the video, from the skins. And this has been used all over. Cornell used it. Nova, the TV program, used this painting. So it became a pretty popular piece of mine. So this is the way I typically develop a painting. One of my favorite birds, and if people know me, they know I love whippoorwills. And whippoorwills are almost impossible to see, and they're really declining in Connecticut. So these are some sketches I did of whippoorwills, and I actually have them close by my house here. I can see them singing. Sometimes they land in a road. So these are some sketches of the birds. The pink eyes are from the flashlight. When you shine the flashlight on them, their eyes are pink. And this is a photograph of one with a flash. And I also used to paint night scenes when I was in Potsdam many years ago, not in the early 80s. So I would paint night scenes. This is a moonlit scene I painted. And I would go out and try to photograph scenes at night. So I actually went out, and I had a skin of a whippoorwill, and this is in the moonlight. So I developed a painting with all those things combined, and this became my whippoorwill painting. And I put a house in the distance. That's supposed to be me living in the house, listening to the whippoorwill. So this is for myself. So this is a moonlight painting based on all the research of a whippoorwill. So all of this combined now is starting to contribute to me doing more fully realized paintings. And this one in particular was from a trip I took in 2000 with Kate to the British Isles. And this is the Ring of Brogar, which is a Scottish standing stones site. And this is a bird that's flying around the curlew, which is a very famous bird in British literature and music. I got a commission to do an insect book of night singing insects. So I took advantage of that. I would capture things like this. It's called a conehead. And I would do studies of this weird insect. And this book actually came out. It's now out of print, but it's called A Guide to Night Singing Insects. And I illustrated the whole thing. And my wife, Kate, actually did the audio CD of it, narrating all the different insects. And these are some of the plates. And all of these were done from life when I could actually find the insects. So you could see that working from life crosses all boundaries. So you could do insects, plants, birds. And here's some more plates from that particular book. I have friends who are quite famous in the world of wildlife art, and they've helped me along the way. They've given me jobs. This man, Albert Gilbert, is one of the leading wildlife artists in the country. And you could see he won the duck stamp by doing this particular illustration. Now, winning the duck stamp is like a singer winning American Idol. He got so much money from this, and it's used as a duck stamp, that he was able to buy a house with the money. So a lot of people actually do like entering the duck stamp. It's almost impossible to win, but this was his winning entry. He's one of the leading bird illustrators. So he did books like this, Curassows and Related Birds, and Trogons. And these are some of the plates of his. Also, another person who is very famous, especially with South American birds, is Guy Tudor. And getting to know Guy was a ticket to illustrating some of the modern guides that I've done. He knows everybody, he's worked with everybody, and he decided to kind of give up illustrating and recruit a younger artist to take over for him. So here he lives in Queens. So here we are in Queens birding, and this is Guy Tudor. And these are some of the books that he has illustrated in the past. Considered one of the best bird painters of neotropical birds. And very famous, people know him. And there's Guy in his little apartment in Queens, he's studio working. And these are some of the plates he was working on. Absolute stickler for detail, very, very fussy. So I began to work for him. And he worked with this gentleman. The guy with the red hat is a very famous Robert Ridgely, who's a world famous ornithologist. He became famous back in the 90s for discovering a new bird species in Ecuador, the Yokotoko antpitta. And it's from Yokotoko, but he actually discovered a new bird species based on a call he couldn't identify. So I got to travel with this world ornithologist. He wrote The Birds of Ecuador. So there we are in Ecuador together. He took me there because I was going to illustrate a book for him. So here we are, two guys traveling around Ecuador looking at birds. It was, I did this in 2012, one of the best opportunities in my lifetime. And he would introduce me to birds like this, long-trained hummingbird, and you could see that I was sketching from life. He was impressed that I was sketching from life. He'd never been with anyone else who did that. So I was doing a lot of sketches of birds from life, and he was counting on me to illustrate some of the birds he was going to be writing about. This is an Amazon kingfisher, all done from life. I did this actually when I was in a boat. So this Andean lapwing was one of the birds we saw way up in the Andes. And this is a habitat. In the distance, you can see the volcano rock formations. And so I came up with this painting based on my trip to the Andes in Ecuador. So the two of them decided they were going to do a book called Birds of Brazil, and they recruited me to do some plates for it. So these are some of the plates I created for that book. And Guy Tudor was the person I was looking at and asking for help because I hadn't seen a lot of these birds. So he really helped me with the poses, and the size of the birds. So these are all the plates from that book. So what I had to do in order to do these illustrations was go to Yale University to the bird collection. This is Christoph, and he's in charge of the bird illustrations, our bird collection. And I would have to borrow the skins of the birds I had to illustrate. So here's the birds. He's letting me actually bring these home. They pack them. I have to check them out like a library book. Then I carefully sketch them out and lay them on a plate, and I send it off to Guy Tudor to look at and see if they're okay. I thought these looked pretty good, but he had a few suggestions. This is typical. It's like, oh, okay. Every plate I had this many changes. So I would move it around. It was always better after he worked on it. And then I would start painting. So this is my typical setup. The only thing that's missing is a cup of coffee, which I'm probably drinking when I'm taking the picture. So I have the birds and I'm working, which is why my posture is so bad. I'm working on the bird, and you can see I'm holding this particular bird and I'm doing the painting of it. I have to compensate for some of the colors. So sometimes it's a little brighter in the sunlight. But this is a barbet, and this is the final plate of the barbettes. So you can see all the stages we have to go through to just create one plate. And I'm so confident that these are accurate because I had so many eyes looking at it, critical eyes, and everybody was happy with these plates. So here's some of the plates I created for some of these projects. All of them were based on a lot of the birds that I took out of the museum. They all had to go through Guy Tudor and Bob Ridgely, and eventually they ended up as these plates. And I'm very happy with these plates, some of the best I've ever done, I feel. So recently, within the last 4 years, I got a commission to work for the new Peterson guide that came out. And the editor, Lisa White, asked me to do all of the birds of Hawaii because they're including Hawaii in the newest edition of the Peterson guide. So I had to go and create all of these birds of Hawaii. Many of them I've never seen. And I had an expert working with me on this project as well. So if you get the newest field guide, Birds of America by Peterson, the ABA now deemed Hawaii as part of the North America list. So all of the new birds of Hawaii were painted by me. I was thrilled to be able to do that. And they wanted them in the style of Peterson, which is why they're on white backgrounds and everything. These are some of the extinct birds of Hawaii. So this was my latest project. I'm very proud of the fact that I'm in the newest Peterson guide. So overall, you know, all of the things that I've done lead up to my love of birds. And these are some of the plates that I've done that are for sale. And what they are, they're birds, but they're also trying to recreate, like I said earlier, my experiences of painting birds. This is a painting of a whooping crane dancing on its breeding ground. These are scarlet macaws. These were actually done for a book for a gentleman in Brazil. And I don't think the book was ever actually published, but he has all of the plates. This is another bird from swallowtail kite from Florida. And I also do more, recently I've got really into doing lighting, special lighting with particular birds. This is from a memory when I was a little boy. I was at a picnic and I saw my first hummingbird sitting in a catalpa tree with sunlight hitting it. So you could see, even from age of like 10 and 12, I remember things like this. I can't remember my wife's name sometime, but I can remember lighting on a hummingbird when I was 12. Her name is Kate, by the way. So these are some of my newer paintings, and you can see they're not just about the birds anymore. They're about my experiences of seeing birds. So these are actual scenes. This was right across the street. There was a hawk sitting in a tree, red-shouldered hawk, and the gibbous moon was just coming up. It's early in the evening. One of the things it's very strange. I was asked to do a painting of a dinosaur that was discovered, and they actually were able to figure out the color of the plumage on this dinosaur based on studies of the particular fossil. So there were things in the fossil that coded it and made them able to read the particular colors. And so I ended up doing this painting for them. I had 1 weekend to do this, to beat National Geographic and I did this painting, and this is Rick Crum at Yale, and I gave him the original. So this painting has been used all over the world. I'm still getting notices from Australia, China. It's called Anchiornis huxleyi. And what they do is they look at the melanin found in the feathers, and they can figure out the colors. So these are some of my newer paintings, and you can see that these are based on light. This is cobalt-winged parakeets, and I saw this in Brazil, and they were like flocking into this particular area, and there were spotty sunlight hitting them. This is a newer painting of a hooded merganser in early spring, and floating amongst the cattails. And this is a new painting of a backlit snowy egret from a marsh. So you could see that I'm not just painting birds anymore. I'm painting memories and lighting. I'm really interested in lighting nowadays. So I'm still out there, and I'm still sketching from life. Kate caught me in a sketching from life pose here. She said, "Don't move." And if you're interested in seeing any more of my work, I do have a website, Michael DiGiorgio Nature Art. And if you want to visit it, that'd be great. I do have a page with all of my prints that are for sale now. So you can go on this page and buy them. I think they're $85, including shipping. And I ship any one of them to you if you're interested. So that is, stop share. That is my presentation. So if anybody has a question.
We have someone who has their hand raised, but I just want to say I've known Mike for since 1999. And I learned a lot of new things today that backlit snowy egret is gorgeous.
Thank you.
So to go to, we had someone who had their hand raised and she had to leave, it looks like. So I'm sorry to see that. Does anyone
No,
else?
she's coming in as a panelist.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So Eva had a question. She had her hand raised.
Okay.
Hold on one second. Mike, while we're waiting for Eva, I wanted to ask you about the skins. It seems a little bit gruesome, but can you explain why it's important that museums have captured these birds and have preserved their skins?
Yeah, basically study skins are collected of most bird species. I think Yale has the 7th largest collection in the world. I think the British Museum has the largest collection. American Museum of Natural History has one of the largest collections. And I actually had to go down there to borrow the bird skins, but they're really meant for people, not just artists, but people who study bird skins, DNA studies, reclassification. As you can see, recently they actually used study skins to reclassify certain birds. Like they found out recently that scarlet tanagers are not tanagers. They're related to cardinals. So they're put from one drawer into another, but it was based on DNA studies from skins. So they're a very, very important tool for ornithologists. And, you know, you can see that they're not posed, they're not taxidermy studies, they're actually just flat skins. And studying the plumage is also, plumage typically doesn't change. So they can study the plumage from one genus to another. Birds in Brazil, actually, north of the Amazon, south of the Amazon, the same species can look totally different. So study skins help with that as well.
Eva's with us now. Eva, did you have a question for Mike?
I did not. I'm on my Zoom on my phone. So I was having operating difficulties there, but so fascinating. I've always been a bird watcher, and you're just starting off that you had printed for the Danbury Mint.
Yeah.
I am like, wow. I'm so happy that I signed up for this, and I've enjoyed it very much. And I've learned a lot. I took a couple of screenshots of some native birds when you were speaking of them. I'm going to start looking for them.
Great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a couple younger artists come to me for advice. And, you know, what I typically tell them is, don't try to make a living doing this, first of all, because it's impossible. I have to do other things to make money. I can't live as a bird artist as much as I want to, but it's also something that you do if you can't help but want to do it, right? If you have a passion for it, nobody can stop you from doing this, then go for it, because it's a very satisfying way to live. And it also gets you outdoors. You know, I've been on many birding trips and sketching trips where we didn't see much of anything, but we were outdoors, so how bad can it be, right? So there's always things to look at. My wife is a wildflower expert, and when we go in the woods, she looks down and I look up, and we end up enjoying our experience. You know, in Costa Rica, she was going crazy with the wildflowers and the orchids. So yeah, it's just, you know, I feel that anything that gets you outdoors, and you don't have to know a lot about whatever you're looking at, as long as you're outdoors enjoying it. I saw Pam post some incredible wildflower pictures the other day. And, you know, just going out this time of year and seeing the things that are just coming up and the birds that are just starting to arrive. This is a big season for bird watching. It's worth it. So just, you know, whatever you can do, just get outdoors.
Mike, we have 2 questions from Mary Ellen. First, she says, stunningly beautiful art. Does your website have a listing of art shows that you're a part of? And her second question is, have you ever displayed at the Highstead Arboretum in Reading?
Okay, could you repeat the questions? Does my website have what?
Does your website have a listing of any art shows that you're a part of?
Okay.
And have you ever displayed your art at the Highstead Arboretum in Reading, Connecticut?
No, the second question, no, I haven't, but I'm going to look into that. Thank you. And yes, my website does have some of the shows I have been in. Currently, there hasn't been a lot of shows because of COVID, unfortunately. But I enter Birds in Art every year, and I think this fall I might be posting some new shows that I'm going to be in. So if you want to stay up to date, just check my website because I will post any show that I'm in. I'm not currently in any show right now, but I do post my work on Facebook, so that gets it out.
Okay. So does anyone else have any questions for Mike? If not, we'll go right to our lovely piece of art that Mike was generous enough to lend to us today as an incentive. So hold on one second. I'm going to try and find it and then share my screen. Mike, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your very busy day to do this.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
I did too. Like I said, I learned a lot new today, and I've known you for a very long time. So hold on one second. I'm going to share my screen if I can.
I'm sorry I never painted parakeets, but I think I'm going to try now.
Okay, let's see. Hold on. Oops, I have to, there we go. All right, I'm going to share my screen and show you the piece of art that we have today. This is the piece of art we're going to be providing as an incentive. Thanks again. It's so beautiful.
You're welcome. This is Lake George, New York in the background, by the way.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a bald eagle here in Trumbull at Twin Brooks Park this spring. It was quite a thrill. So thank you for everyone who joined. And we had some come in and some leave, but right now for folks who are here, Cindy Killian, you have won the print. So I'll be in touch with you on how to get it to you.
Great, Cindy. Hope you enjoy it.
So Mike, thanks again. And thank you all who joined today. Be in touch.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, that was great.